retired David Boje, and for about 40 years, I studied storytelling organizations, leadership, trying to control narratives in organizations. And believe me, they're all storytelling organizations. The main way of sense making is through the stories. You think it's through the facts? You think it's through being objective? No. There, in the Epstein scandal, you've got political parties trying to control the narratives, blame the other party. Then you've got news organizations saying they got what's true, but kind of ignoring their own journalists that were linked up with Epstein. Well, I would say it's more like the goathead theory. I call it the goathead because if you take one of these goat heads, they're all over New Mexico here, brought over from Europe, by the way. Thank you very much. And they stick to your clothes, they stick to your hair, your bottom of your tennis shoes, your dog's paws, and they track them in the house. You get all over the house. You can't go barefoot in your own house. I mean, it's just kind of a nuisance. And it hurts when you step on a goat head. You've been in New Mexico? Go running in the desert barefoot and see how far you get without going, oh my God, I just stepped on something. Yes, you did. And it punctured right through your foot. All right, probably through your tennis shoes. Some of them, well, they can get pretty nasty. Do you know a single goat head plant is this vine thing? And it's a superorganism full of trillions of cells, living cells, just like our body is a superorganism full of trillions of cells. All right. And when that superorganism called the goat head expands, we lose sight of how important the goat head is to getting the soil so it's not all like packed in. And the roots kind of do that. There's certain medicines that are involved. Hey, weevils eat the goat heads, no problem. I guess they got that long snout thing. But here, all the people involved in what I call storytelling organizations, they're trying to get rid of the goat heads. Except for the victims. Have you noticed that the victims are there telling you pretty much what's true, at least what they believe happened, and some of it's pretty well documented. But if you listen to the CEOs, the journalists, the academics, like myself, I get to be a goat head too sometimes. Well, political parties, politicians, they're trying to get rid of the goat heads. Watch how they do it. This is what this film I produced is all about. Thank you.
You ever get that feeling that you're just not getting the whole story? You know, that behind the official press release or the slick headline, there's a much messier, more complicated truth hiding in plain sight? Well, today, we're going to give you a brand new tool to see right through that noise. So let's dive in and start untangling it. I mean, that's the big question, isn't it? Because controlling a story, it isn't just about spinning a few facts. It's about building an entire reality. It's about deciding who gets a voice, what evidence sees the light of day, and what gets buried forever. And if you can understand that mechanism, you can start to understand how power really works. To really unpack this, we're going to look at one of the most tangled and disturbing stories of our time, the Epstein scandal. Now, let's be clear, our goal here isn't to re-report all the grim details. We're actually using it as a case study to pull back the curtain on a fascinating framework that shows how massive organizations, powerful leaders, and entire systems manage truth and hide catastrophic failure. So, at the very heart of the scandal, and really any big scandal, there's this fundamental battle going on. On one side, you have what the source material calls story seeds. Think of these as the raw, unfiltered, often incredibly painful truths from the people who were actually there. And on the other side, you've got the story filters. These are the sophisticated systems of PR, legal maneuvers, and even our own mental shortcuts that are designed to manage, to distort, and sometimes to completely crush those seeds. The real story is in that collision. The lens we're going to use to see all this clearly comes from the work of Dr. David Boje, and he gives us this incredible toolkit of ideas. Some are really powerful, some are, well, a little strange, but they let us see these story filters in action. So let's start with the big one. Okay, so here's the crucial idea you need to get. For Dr. Boje, organizations don't just tell stories, they are stories, right? They're these living, breathing networks of competing narratives. Just think about it. You have the official mission statement on the website, But then you have the real stories, the gossip happening at the water cooler. You have the CEO's grand vision, and then the actual reality for the person on the front line. In this view, power is simply about whose story wins out. And this right here, this is where it gets really wild. This number explains why story filters are so powerful, right down to a biological level. See, our brains are getting hit with about 11 million bits of information every single second. But our conscious mind, it can only handle about 11. So what happens with the other 10,999,989 bits? Well, our brain takes shortcuts. It creates these story filters to fill in all the gaps. It's a survival tool, sure, but it's also a huge vulnerability that can be exploited to shape our entire view of the world. Now, to help us really visualize this kind of systemic rot, Dr. Boje uses this really striking metaphor, the goat head puncture vine. Just imagine an organization that's been totally consumed by scandal is like this nasty, invasive weed. It just spreads everywhere, uncontrollably, and its painful thorns, those are the raw story seeds. They puncture everything and everyone they touch. It makes it almost impossible to live an ethical, healthy life inside that system. But here's the catch. The metaphor is actually more clever than just evil plant. Because in the real world, the goat head plant actually has some value. It's used in some traditional medicines, it can help prevent soil erosion, and that duality is such a sharp reminder that even the most corrupt systems can serve other purposes, which is often what makes them so hard to see clearly and even harder to get rid of. It's a real tangled knot. Okay, so we've got the framework. Now let's put it to work. We're going to use this tool called the 7 W's, simple questions like who, when, why, to see exactly how the victim's raw story seeds crash right into power's story filters. Let's start with the first W, who. So first up, who are the main characters here? Well, in their own stories, the victims are survivors. They're fighting for justice. They're defined by their courage and their ethical stand. But the story filter, it creates a totally different character for the powerful, this carefully built, superficial public mask that's designed only to protect itself. The organization itself becomes this goat head superorganism, a faceless system where no single person has to take the fall. Next, let's look at the battle over when. For the victims, time is anchored to these very specific traumatic moments that have defined their entire adult lives. Their truth is simple. Justice delayed is justice denied. But the story filter does the exact opposite. It engages in what Dr. Boje calls the engineering of amnesia, a deliberate, systemic effort to blur the timeline, delay any consequences, and ultimately make everyone forget it ever even happened. The motivation, the why, is another huge battleground. The victim's story seed is crystal clear. This is a human issue, and it demands transparency for the good of all of us. The story filter's why is way, way narrower. It's usually boiled down to something like protecting shareholder value, or just pure self-interest. And to protect that interest, it deploys the weaponization of complexity, basically drowning a simple human call for justice in a whole ocean of legal jargon and corporate double talk. And finally, just look at with whom this is all happening. The victims, they built a powerful sorority, this united, collective voice to challenge the system together as one. The filter of power? It did the opposite. It created a deafening silence, protecting a tiny in-group while turning its back on everyone else. It's an incredible illustration of the power of a collective voice versus the destructive, isolating power of silence. So we've seen this whole framework in action. We've taken the machine apart. But the real question is, so what? What do we do with this? Why does any of this matter outside of this one specific scandal? Well, for anyone out there trying to lead an ethical organization, or hey, even just live an ethical life, the takeaways here are huge. This analysis gives us a pretty clear roadmap. First, choose to be answerable for what happens. Don't just focus on saving your own skin. Second, let go of trying to control the narrative. Instead, you have to actively listen to all the stories, especially the messy ones that make you uncomfortable. Third, be brave enough to call out that goat head corruption when you see it, even if it's in your own organization. And finally, prioritize what's wise and good for everyone involved, not just what's fast, easy, and profitable. Look, at the end of the day, this whole framework isn't just some neat academic exercise. It's a call to action. It argues that the entire point of understanding these story filters is so that we can start to dismantle them,
to push for real transformation that actually serves justice and helps us build sustainable, ethical organizations for the future.
And that leaves us with one last thought to take with you. Now that you have this tool, this new lens, you're going to start seeing these dynamics playing out everywhere. At your job, in the news you watch, maybe even in your own family. So start asking yourself, what are the messy story seeds that are being ignored or silenced? And what are the powerful story filters that are shaping the reality you see every single day?